Welcome, everyone. Today's Pathway Through the Dark Writing Project. This project is sponsored by Humanities New York. It is also part of the Niagara Arts and Cultural Center's hosting of creative writing and art workshop focused on sharing the personal stories of those who have visual impairments, their friends, and family. The project is about learning how to tell your story and about discovering the underlying common human experiences. Storytelling is the core of culture, and it brings people together to entertain each other, to learn, and often teach about life and the ways of interacting with the world. We hope that you will have an opportunity to share your story today. Sponsored by Humanities New York. Using dialogue, reflection, critical thinking, Humanities New York applies the humanities to strengthen democratic society. In partnership with VIA, Visually Impaired Advancement, the Niagara Arts and Cultural Center, and NIAGA, the Lewiston Library in Lewiston, New York. So thank you so much for joining us here today. Our distinguished speakers and guest hosts for today are author Bob Giannetti and the distinguished author, I'm just like Norah Perez, who is, I'm like, Bob's a poet and an author. They're very keen on making sure I say the right words. They're authors. They both have published books. And they're available for sale. But today, they're here to help you guide your way through your next book. So if you don't mind, we're going to do a roll call to let know everybody who is here with us today. Let's start with those who are in the room. Would you mind saying your name?
Ellen Clark.
Ellen Clark?
Yes.
Pleasure to meet you.
Michelle Kritz.
Michelle Kratz, pleasure.
Stacy Adams.
Stacy Adams. And I'm Kelly Buckley. And if you wouldn't mind then, in the, how do we do that on Zoom? I guess, Rosetta, would you mind?
Hello, good morning.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Good morning.
just
Morning.
Sorry, okay. We have Rosetta is with us today. Michael Stacy is with us today. Jen Isaacson is with us today. Geraldine Wilson is here as well. Jen,
Yes, I'm here.
we just need to make sure we have two different names for our two Jens. Should I call you Jen? I'll just say Jen Isaacson.
Froggy.
Pardon?
Froggy.
Froggy. Nice to meet you. Jen Isaacson is officially Froggy.
I like that.
Pleasure to meet you, Froggy. We're also joined by Lauren Petruccelli. Christopher, is it Sabini or Sabine?
Sabin, actually.
Sabin. Mr. Sabin, poet and author. Kevin is joining us today. Kevin, can you say hello?
Everyone, I'm Kevin Morales.
Pleasure, Kevin. Jonathan, can you say hello? I just want to say, Jonathan, if you decide to join in a little bit later, you can. We have Jonathan is with us, and we also have someone on the telephone who I'm not sure who it is. Okay, if you decide to join us, I think, so we have a few people on there. So I'm going to turn this over now that we know who's in the room to our hosts today, to our teachers, Bob and Norah.
Good morning. We thought we'd start this this morning with just a little commentary that we're going to share with you on the power of poetry and the power of fiction. Norah asked me to go first, kindly, so I will. And I have a few things to say about the power of poetry that really relate to culture. Culture in a very broad sense, historically. Poetry and art of all types, music, visual art, were an instrument of power for the autocratic rulers of the ancient world. That is, if you think of some of the imagery, you see kings battering people in ancient Egyptian friezes and wielding power and talking about the glory of their nation. The same thing in poetry. Homer, who incidentally was blind, was blind by tradition. Homer glorified the ancient world in what he did. That is the fall of Troy, the great Greeks under Agamemnon who accomplished this. It was a way of memorializing and projecting power. The next great epic writer that we come across is Virgil. And Virgil takes up the story. Homer was, maybe 8th century BC. Virgil in the early days of the Common Era, AD, starts to talk about ancient Rome and how ancient Rome came to be. And it was really an inheritance of the refugees from Troy that get picked up in Virgil's epic. And the founding of Troy, the founding of Rome dates back to the fall of Troy and the great hero Aeneas coming to make of the ashes, literally, of Troy something new in Rome. The other great epic poet is Dante, who is a Christian poet in pre-Renaissance Europe. And he has a lot to say about the journey of the soul from really an inferno to purgatory and then to paradise. Edmund Spenser, the great English poet, also is someone who helps to project the power of Elizabeth in a Christian context. So you have this movement here, and by the time you get to the Renaissance proper with Shakespeare, you have a lot of things going on, but Shakespeare, incidentally, helped to project the power of Elizabeth, the Queen, Elizabeth I, and made sure he didn't step on any toes. He didn't step on any toes in terms of the politics. What is going on here really is a sense of glorifying the traditions of the common culture, the conservative common culture, in that whole projection. What happens, though, in the Renaissance, and this is important because this will lead us to where we are now, is that a certain individuality begins to take hold. It's the sense of common culture is still there, but the writers are now starting to think individually. And so the poetry often has an individuality, but it's still in the common culture. It's when you get to the Romantic poets and what is called lyric poetry, which is really from about 1750 up through the present, is when people start to express themselves as individuals. And so poetry becomes a very powerful means of self-expression to the degree that that you have so many different kinds of cultures being memorialized in poetry, so many different people participating, that we go from kind of a conservative, very buttoned down world to one that is liberated through the Romantic movement. That's not to say that anything preceded was not good. It was, but where we are is in a fragmented, individualistic culture, and we express ourselves in a way that could never have been thought of in all those other things I went through. You know, and since we're talking here about people who have a visual impairment or are affected by such, Homer was blind. Milton, the great poet Milton, was blind. Uh, Homer may have been a fiction, but people prefer to say that he was blind. Milton definitely was blind. He was a very conservative poet. He was part of the conservative opposition to what was a revolutionary movement in England in the 18th century. The thing that's important here too is that you know, Milton's blindness did not stop him. Homer's didn't. The fact of the matter is there are many modern figures who have dealt with vision issues. And again, this is part of the individuality that characterizes so much of modern poetry and modern life. James Joyce. James Joyce suffered very badly from poor vision, thick glasses, when that was all that they could do for him. He also had severe migraines and peptic ulcers. Jorge Luis Borges, the great South American author, also had vision issues. You can also mention James Thurber. If any of you remember that figure, he's not too well known today, but he did a number of cartoons. Thurber was blinded in his left eye at an early age by a toy gun. His right eye had had moderate vision, but he struggled with this his whole life. The grand person who struggled with this and writes a modern personal epic, again, a personal individual epic, is Helen Keller. And Helen Keller had multiple sensory deprivations, born blind, deaf, mute. She wrote and told everyone something, not just people who have a visual challenge. I don't want to go on too long here, but I just wanted to give you a sense of the power and how your personal power at this point fits into a continuum of history, which is the, you know, and is part of the glory of literature. And I think we're very fortunate to be. Did that affect anyone? No. Okay. You know, there's maybe one other interesting fact of this, which is really part of this course, which is an important part of it. Poetry is today a conversation in the way it was not in some of the previous eras I talked about prior to the Renaissance, because what you had was a projection of orthodoxy, you know, the conservative viewpoint before. But today, poetry becomes a conversation, and because we live in so many different environments and cultures, we have questions of the poet and the poetry, and how we learn in the modern world, if you think about it, is we're doing less and less reading per se, long books, whatever, and dealing more with conversations, whether it be in person or virtually. And we're even in conversation with Siri. The fact is, though, Siri's of no use to us unless you know what to ask her. And I think that's our challenge in the modern world, what to ask. And when you think about what to ask, you have the urge to write poetry.
Bob's given us a very, very fascinating history of poetry from the ancients right up until modern times. And my theme today is the power of fiction, the power of the short story. And that is, the short story is relatively new to the world. The American short story is very new to the world and a very important part of it. After a lifetime of writing fiction, a little while ago, I just wrote a paragraph about fiction writing that might interest you. I say that fiction writing is like dreaming, not as a helpless sleeper, but with eyes wide awake, hands clutching the wheel, in control. Some have a sense of where they're going, but others like to travel without a map or a lunch or even an umbrella. That's the kind of writer I am. Sometimes the tire goes flat or we run out of gas, but usually the trip is a heady exploration with startling surprises by the side of the road or on distant hills under the trees. We pick up hitchhikers and let them talk and take on more until often the vehicle is as crowded as a Mexican bus. But if the weather stays fine and we don't veer into a tree, we roll on until we sight a big red stop sign. And that's the place where we were headed all the time. I think as children, stories may have a tremendous impact on our lives. And I often think back of the books I read as a kid that really influenced the person I became. And I think we all as kids read or have books read to us. And we all have very different tastes. Some kids go for mysteries or science fiction or any number of things, and often follow those tastes onward as they grow older. The story I remember that made the most impact on me as a 4-year-old was a book called Lazy Liza Lizard. And I loved Lazy Liza Lizard because she was quite naughty. And she wore an old-fashioned sunbonnet and her tail poked out right from under her petticoats. And she always got into trouble, but by the end of the book, she usually came around and behaved herself. So that satisfied me very much. And I was introduced to public libraries when I was about 4. And to me, this was an edifice in our town, a small town outside of Toronto. And my father explained about Andrew Carnegie, who had made the public library a possibility for so many people when immigrants were flooding into the country. A public library in every small town was a marvelous gift. I still think it's one of the great gifts of all time, the public library, and I still go to a public library a couple of times a week. I have always done so. It's an exciting place, always, when you walk in. But writing fiction is I think people might assume that writing short fiction is easier than writing longer fiction, which is not true. Writing short fiction actually requires great skill and discipline because you've got to concentrate and bring everything into a few pages. A novelist, on the other hand, can just meander, as I mentioned in the little paragraph I just wrote, that you can meander, you can digress, you can bring in different characters, you can wander around. A lot of novelists, I won't say a lot of them, some of them know where they're going. I would say maybe mystery writers know exactly where they're going. Other writers just like to be surprised, and that's the kind of writer I am. I know who my characters are, but they mostly lead me, and I'm often very surprised at what they do. And that to me is the fun and the pleasure of writing short fiction. But when I mentioned the United States being very short fiction, or the short story probably came with de Maupassant and Chekhov, European writers. But when our country was bringing in millions of people at the turn of the century, they all brought their stories with them. And they wanted to write it down and they wanted to tell their stories. But the United States was very different from Europe in that we were a bustling country. We were busy. We were going places. And I think the short story sort of caught fire. There had been Poe and others who, in the 1800s, late 1800s, but the American short story took off. There were some sort of formal ones, conservative ones, but then it just took off in a rush and by 1916, there were already anthologies being assembled of fine short stories. And the movement just went on in a burst of vibrancy. And there was a certain magazine, the New Yorker, of course, became very prominent in the 20s and 30s, and still is today. As if you can get a story in the New Yorker, well, that's nirvana. But the stories reflect what is going on. We went through the World War I, and in the Roaring 20s, the Roaring 20s would be the era of Fitzgerald and many other, Hemingway, 30s, World War II. By the 50s, the short stories were reflecting suburban life. Those would be the stories of John Cheever, many other wonderful, I can't even enumerate how many wonderful writers there are. And they go through fads and fashions. I would say now the short story might be described as minimalist. They change, but I would suggest to anybody who is interested in writing fiction, not necessarily short stories, just fiction, there is an anthology that came out in the 90s, and John Updike was the editor of that. And it was his opinion of what were the best short stories of the century. And I think anybody would find it just fascinating how many marvelous stories there are. Some are very short, some are rather lengthy. Saul Bellow, for instance, he goes on and on. But I think you would be amazed at the quality. A lot of these authors are forgotten, but their stories live on, and they reflect the whole breadth of American activity, starting early 1900s right up until I think that this came out in the 90s, so 100 years. So I would suggest that you read some of these stories, and you will be astounded. They're very akin to poetry. I think the short story has a lot of poetic influences, not just in style, but in the idea of compressing a whole lot of things into one small paragraph or pages. So we're looking forward to your questions and hearing your own work. I'm very interested in hearing what you've written. And if we don't get around to hearing it all today, we will certainly keep it, and we will make sure that people can hear it later on. So
We do have 3 people who have joined us here today who did turn in short stories, and that includes Jen Isaacson, Kevin Morales, and Geraldine Wilson. I don't know if they would like to, and we also have some other folks who wrote some works that they may wish to share today. Would one of you, would someone like to go first? Are you ready to take readers?
Sure.
Is that, can I have someone use the button in? Do we want to start with someone in the room? Would you like to share?
Okay.
All right, just introduce yourself first.
Yep, my name is Helen Clark.
All right, can everybody hear Helen?
No.
Okay, one moment. And I will get Helen a microphone. I have a mic for you, Helen.
Nora, can I ask you, what is the title of that anthology?
Yes, it's the first.
So
yes, the thing.
I have
First
hearing aids.
100
Oh,
years.
no, it's okay. It's gonna go right here.
Best
Right on, like, you can just hold it right
best
there. and
short
you're gonna be fine.
stories of the last 100 years. It's John
Do I
Updike.
need to tell them
And
a little bit about
I'll get a
myself?
better
Sure.
title
All
for
right.
you, Michelle.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Helen.
Well, hello, my name is Helen Clark. And I'm originally from Bartow, Pennsylvania. And I settled here in Lewiston, New York after my husband Barry Clark died. And the reason my daughter Karen family live in Dundas, Ontario. And I'm close to the border. Since I moved here to Lewiston, I've made many friends and some very close friends who treat me like family. As for my hobbies, I enjoy doing research and have become the historian for my large family, undertaking recording our lives. I love reading, romantic travel adventures, mysteries, time travel adventures, and magical books. Looking forward to spring, taking care of my herbs in my garden as well. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Were you able to hear that?
Everyone hear it?
Can you hear me?
Geraldine, were you able to hear that? Okay, good. Yes.
I didn't hear Geraldine though.
Oh, she nodded. I have her on mute because,
Okay, okay,
Okay.
okay. All right. You have a most interesting approach. You are recording other lives basically, which is really interesting. I mean, that does bear a good bit of relationship to how a fiction writer works, creating the character, but you're creating the character from life, basically.
and she has some stories to share.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
And obituaries tell wonderful stories. I think
Yeah.
all of us enjoy a good obituary.
Yeah.
Well, I don't actually do obituaries.
Uh-huh.
When someone in my family dies, I gather all the information from the surrounding people who are involved with that one person. I get all the information and I put it into the story of their life.
Mhm.
And I try to make it as nice as possible. And I kept on doing this.
Yeah.
About 50 years.
And you use interviews. You interview people to get all the information you
Right.
need.
I send out little questionnaires to them and they respond to me.
Yes.
That anyone in the family wants to know anything, they always come to me because I know everything. So I kind of enjoy doing that.
That's fascinating.
And I
I-
traveled Europe several times to find my family and everything. And I traveled Pennsylvania thoroughly with cemeteries to make sure all the dates that I had on the tombstones were correct, that nothing was hearsay.
Well, cemeteries tell wonderful stories.
And I also have a book that I put together. And it was published here it wasn't published, but it was shown here at the library.
Uh-huh.
But
What was the name of it?
it was my own book.
Oh, your own
My
book.
cemetery. I went to 15 different cemeteries.
Yes.
And all the families that had passed, I had gone in circles. Like I didn't realize at the time. It started out as a little girl in the families, and I went around and around and around. And then finally came back to Lewiston. I hit everyone.
Yes.
It was just amazing. It was just
And
fascinating.
Helen, you had a story you wanted to share?
I have a story. It's a true story. It happened to me several years ago. Okay. My experience at the Hemtag Beach, Palmerston North, New Zealand. This story takes place while visiting my daughter
You're okay.
and granddaughter in Palmerston North, New Zealand. My granddaughter was around 6 months old. One day while visiting my daughter Karen, she wanted to show me the Hamilton Beach and Pacific Ocean. I was all excited. This was an adventure, but I only knew of the Atlantic Ocean beaches. When we arrived at the beach and I actually saw the beach, and Ocean became overly excited. As the two of us ventured down the beach with Karen carrying little Zoe, so family sitting on the beach eating and playing. So I proceeded down to the water, for I just wanted to put my foot into the Pacific Ocean. Karen, standing further back, watched as I put my foot into the water. Well, the undertow was so strong, it pulled me right in. I panicked, never witnessed anything like this before, especially when my feet were held tight in the sand and the current was so strong, couldn't pull them out. Every time the water pulled out to sea, I was pulled also with the water, receded to where the water brushed over my feet, but I could not get my feet out from the sand, was stuck in the undercurrent. Everyone on the beach jumped up. They started to throw ropes out to me, but I was getting too far away. I started to panic, and Karen was screaming, holding Zoe. Though I was going to drown in the Pacific Ocean, when all of a sudden, a voice spoke to me and ordered me very strongly to calm down and listen. I recognized the voice, having heard him before. So I calmed down and listened. I was told to stay still and not wiggle, as the water was now pulling me out further. When the water receded back to shore, pull your left leg out now and step sideways. As I did this, broke the hold of the current and was able to move closer to shore, where people were throwing out ropes for me to grab onto. No one on the beach would get into the water. They pulled me in and lifted me out of the water. Then one of the residents of the beach told us just a few days ago, a little girl was drowned like that and a shark attacked her. In my excitement of reaching the Pacific Ocean, my children and I never saw the sign saying, "Beware, rip current." Never knew what that was. As we were leaving the beach, a little boy came up to me and said, "Bet you didn't want to get your shoe now." Bet you didn't want to get your shoe now. They gave me a big hug.
That's an amazing story.
I will never go near the water again.
That's a wonderful story.
That was an awful experience.
I'm sure it
Oh,
was. Well, you took a very incredible moment and dramatized it and turned it into a story. Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonder what some of our online people would like to comment.
Sure. Does anybody, all right, and Geraldine would like to make a comment. One moment, Geraldine. Unmute. Fine, Joe. Geraldine, can you unmute?
Okay, am I unmuted?
There you go. You're good.
I don't learn this technology. I wanted to read a piece. One of our assignments, I think, was to talk about a memorable moment.
Yep,
Is this the time to do that?
Sure.
sure.
Okay, it's just called Memorable Moment. I am standing at my laptop staring into the screen. Should I push the button? Should I go back over the questions to make sure of the answers? My mind is racing. It's moving to and fro, heart beating like a rap song on 10. A million thoughts are flooding my mind. I am in deep waters, telling myself to be still, to stand in my moment. I'm excited. I'm scared. I'm leaf shaking. Submit, submit. The words are itching in my ears. Should I scratch? It has been quite a journey. I have decided to study to be a peer support specialist in the middle of a pandemic with a recent diagnosis of a rare brain disease and legally blind. I must be crazy. The screen is taunting me, dangling the words in front of my face, compelling me to take action. Submit, submit. Days of online courses, of webinars, of note-taking, The 2-hour classes take me 4 to 6 hours. The 4-hour classes take me 8 to 9 hours. At times, it is excruciating. It allows those voices in me which condemn and criticize to gain a foothold, to wrap themselves around me and squeeze. Something strange happens. After feeling the squeeze of condemnation, I drip determination. Those voices of criticism push me toward conviction. I am a conqueror. I am not a carrier of failure. I am following a path that is mapped out by He who is greater than I. I am divinely created to succeed. So I reach past the voice and calmly push the submit button. There it is, the sound I was afraid of expecting to hear. The screen is speaking to me in that Australian accent I have chosen as my screen reader. Congratulations, you have completed the necessary requirements to become a provisional certified peer support specialist. What a moment.
Beautiful.
It is.
Really, really, really wonderful. And I think a lot of what you have is it has a lot of the elements of poetry in it, and it is prose, but it is prose poetry, and it's beautiful.
It also connects a little bit with the previous story where
Mhm.
you had to submit,
Yep.
calm down.
Mhm.
This is a similar situation. So I thought that was interesting, even with the Australian connection.
And you did.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, this is wonderful. Let's keep this going.
Yes.
Who else has something?
All right, Froggy would like to go.
Oh, we gotta
and
hear
So
that.
would Christopher. So let's, Froggy had her hand up first. So go ahead, Froggy, and unmute. Froggy, you're still on mute. You just gotta unmute yourself. There you
Okay,
go.
can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
now. This is Froggy, coming to us live from New York.
I guess we're all kind of on a water theme this week.
Oh,
Mine is titled The Shore. The scent of salty air, sun lotion, fried foods, garbage sitting in the sun all day. The sounds of waves crashing on the sand, wheels of chance clicking, muffled conversations, music from the merry-go-round, barkers yelling out. The sight of blinking lights, carnival rides, food stands, colors of all sorts, vast darkness where the beach people were. The taste of clams on a half shell with hot sauce and lemon, fried dough, saltwater taffy, cotton candy. Hot summer days, warm humid nights, both cooled by the offshore breeze. A hurricane, a fire, rebuilt to burn yet again. Summers of childhood, summers of youth, summers of young adulthood, never to be experienced again.
very interesting. What, throw out a question to the group. What makes that poetry? Anyone?
I would say the very last line, never to be experienced again.
I didn't catch all of that.
Christopher said that it was the last line, never to be experienced.
Never to be
again.
experienced again. Is my connection?
Yeah,
Am I coming through?
You
Yes.
are, you were just,
Yes.
you're a little bit choppy, like you were coming through the waves of technology were.
Apparently, I got an unstable internet connection notice. I don't know what's going on. So
Okay.
I would ask, why would it never be experienced again? Would it be a vision problem or just a location?
Pardon?
I'm speaking about the Jersey Shore. It was, it caught on fire. They rebuilt it. It got hit by a hurricane and wiped out. And then it caught on fire again and burned.
Okay,
While it's been rebuilt, it will never be the same. You're not going to have 50 plus years of scents embedded in the woods. You're going to have new wood smells. It's not going to be what I grew up with. The merry-go-round was destroyed in the fire. All of the food stands were destroyed in the fire. And while there's now new, it doesn't replace the old.
Well, you
You've-
caught the momentum of those years, very colorful, very quick moving, very lovely collection of images.
Lots of snapshots.
Yes.
You could almost experience the snapshots. And that's one of the hallmarks of poetry as opposed to progressive fiction or storytelling generally. You really accumulate a lot of images that are talking about the same thing, unifying that experience, and coming up with a powerful ending, which Christopher commented on. So yes, a poem can start with almost anywhere, but something to catch your attention, an image, and then accrue a lot of other images, and then come in with a powerful ending, a powerful conclusion. Short
And-
stories, good short stories do the same thing, but in a different way. There's a slower kind of progression. It's more like a movie. In this case, maybe a home movie as opposed to the snapshots.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
And it took you for a ride.
Yes.
One of the things that I think that poetry should do, or I really kind of any writing, is take you for a ride. I felt like I was kind of on a ride. There was some highs, there was some lows, and then there was a stop. Like, ooh.
That's what Norah commented on, the momentum of the thing. Yeah, I mean, poetry, a good poem drives to an inevitable conclusion.
Well, I think Geraldine's piece did that as well, and sort of yours, Helen, right?
Yeah.
Where you're taking us on a journey,
Yeah.
and we're there with you, right?
Mhm.
And it's a very tangible journey. And I think that's been really strong writers in this
Very,
group so
very,
far.
yes.
These are great.
So Christopher, did you want to go next?
Absolutely. Can you hear me now?
You can.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yes, actually, I just a brief point of introduction. I was introduced to this group through the Writers Division at the National Federation of the Blind, and I was actually introduced to this group and the Niagara Arts Center, Niagara Arts Council. I can't speak today. Just this week, as a matter of fact, and I wanted to share this poem that I suspect got me interested, got me introduced to this group in general, and that is called A Quest to Connect. I'm going to, the poem goes like this. I got to start reading. Walking on busy downtown streets in a strange city, in a land and nation not my own, with nothing to guide me, not even the benefit of sight, only my convictions. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm muting everybody in the background. I'm like, who is it? Is it you,
Okay.
Christopher?
That was my Siri voice. I apologize.
I was blaming Froggy. All right, go ahead.
Okay. Walking on busy downtown streets in a strange city, in a land and nation not my own, with nothing to guide me, not even the benefit of sight, only my convictions. Thinking of how my family will receive me when I return home, knowing that I've spurned their loyalty at such a beautiful place as Niagara Falls. Picking my way up a cold, desolate, anonymous young street in pursuit of family that I have never known, but share my life's goals and desires. I press on.
That tells a wonderful story.
It really does. Without benefit of sight, but the benefit of my convictions. That's a beautiful line.
Yes, it is.
Thank you so much. That poem is actually based on, some family experiences that I have had, and actually a dream that I had years ago. I actually wrote this poem about, I would say it's been almost 20 years, and I actually let this go on my hard drive. I didn't even let the family or a lot of people didn't even know I had written this poem until about 6 months after I'd written it. So
Christopher, were
I
you moving
appreciate it.
on? Were you moving on to Canada? In that,
no, I was not moving on to Canada. It actually has to do with a dream I had. The Canada is actually a metaphor for a strange family, the US and Canada border and Niagara Falls. Is basically a metaphor for the boundaries between estranged family members.
Hmm.
And Yonge Street, of course, refers to Yonge Street in Toronto. That's actually where I was headed. In my dream, that's actually where I was headed. And of course, being from this part of the country, Niagara Falls is obviously one of the transit points between the U.S. and Canada. It's the border connection, and it's one of the more common ones to get to travel from here, this part of the country, to Toronto is Niagara Falls.
Michelle, do you have any comment on that?
Well, I noticed, again, it's that theme where he ended with, I press on. Reminded me of, I didn't get who was the first reader when I walked in, that's ended with submit. I felt it was, I felt this one was a little bit of a mystery too, in a way. I was trying to figure out, there's something really interesting going on here that I wanted to know more about. And it's a little tragic, a little sad, but it drew me in to want to know. But it sounded like at the end, he also was conquering the fears and the unknown.
Yeah.
It's very similar to when we talk about the difference between the short story and the poetry. The feel of the pieces are all very similar so far. But as you were saying before about the poetry being emotional, like, and as you get smaller, you have to get rid of more and more detail, right? Leaving us with a bit more of the raw emotion of the moment. It's very interesting. I'm like, that's, but each one of the pieces have been connecting very strongly. Right? So that, I don't know, it looks like I don't want to jinx us, but these are some darn good writers.
We do.
I'm like,
Yep,
I'm like, I
absolutely.
don't know if Michael wants to follow up or Kevin does with some of the things that you had submitted for Michael. Stacy, did you want to go next? You had submitted a piece. Maybe a no. Can you guys hear me okay?
I was curious about that line, without benefit of sight. Now he's,
Christopher, Norah has a question for you.
yes, I was interested in the line without benefit of sight. So you had visual impairment at that point when you were writing that, or when you were experiencing what you're describing? What does without benefit of sight mean? Literally, or?
Okay, I apologize. I was on mute. Yes, I am actually totally not entirely blind. I can see 5 feet in front of me, but I consider myself blind. And the poem itself actually has to do with I don't know how many people are familiar with how blind people travel and cane travel skills and those types of things. But that whole line of not even a benefit of sight, only my convictions. I don't know if you've ever seen blind people. Blind people do travel the streets of Toronto just like any other big city in the United States or anywhere. And that's essentially where I was coming from, is navigating not even familiarity with the streets based on only my convictions and only this family is going to be at these certain locations. And even I'm not familiar or aware of where this is. I'm just being guided by my own convictions and fate up Yonge Street. And you're from Toronto, Norah, you're from Toronto. I'm sure, just imagine navigating that street without sight.
Well, you conveyed
downtown.
that. You conveyed that so well. Did you hear the sound of the falls? Was that sort of amplified?
Oh, no, no, that's a stereotype that blind people or hear sounds loud or
Okay,
they're magnified or anything like that. Really, the Niagara Falls is more of a metaphor than actually hearing the sound. If I remember the dream I had that really sparked this poem, and I remember in the dream I was a lot more concerned with some of the family stuff that was going on, and really pay a lot of attention to the sound of the falls. The way the sound of the
Christopher,
falls was at the incident, it's sort of incidental, actually.
Christopher, I mentioned before that it's my feeling that a lot of poetry, especially modern poetry, is conversational in a sense that there is an imaginary reader out there who can have a variety of interpretations. I'd like to suggest that what a lot of that meant to me was a lot more universal than just the experience of uh, the walkthrough, the navigation, et cetera. But when you talk about uh, the only sight is your conviction. Uh, would you repeat the exact line again? I'm sorry.
Without even the benefit of sight, only my convictions.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a more generalized statement about humanity in general or a certain people in general. That according to the experience you bring to it, I have limited vision too. So I immediately thought what this was and what you were talking about, but I think thinking as a poet, I think of it as that line having a lot more resonance in terms of looking at it as a conversation, as a reader paying close attention to every word, which you must in reading or hearing a poem. And I think poems should be heard more often than read. But there's a lot more in that line which has applicability to humanity. A lot of people lack vision, but do have convictions that get them somewhere. And
like the poets you mentioned,
Yeah.
Homer, Virgil,
yes,
Well,
Yes.
I'm like, nothing like putting a little pressure on us. Thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
So,
the one who translated,
Yeah.
who had the first, translated the first 6 books of Aeneid from the original Latin, by the way. So
very nice.
Well,
So actually, we do have another person, Kevin. Did you want to share your work? You're off camera, so I can't
Yeah,
tell whether or
I
not.
have a question.
Sure.
So were all of the works being read today submitted beforehand? Or
No,
is that
No, the three,
one of the things we're
two
doing?
more.
not.
Actually, I think there is, I think 4, and we actually, 7 people submitted work online. And 3 of them or 4 of them are here today.
We had not heard.
Yeah, but our actual moderators had not heard the works yet.
Okay.
And I think anyone who hasn't submitted ought to feel free to introduce it, because this is very much an oral, both O and A oral experience. So
Yeah, if you have a piece that you want to share, you definitely are welcome to do so.
You
I just know that, pardon?
Oh, I'm sorry. I can finally be heard. Sorry.
Jonathan, is that you?
Yeah, my name is John. I have no clue what my son's name is Jonathan. I don't know why that came up, but I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, not at all. So who are we speaking with?
John Rogowski.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Oh,
hey, John. Hi.
Hi, Bob.
Oh, I am so glad you joined us. I've been hoping you would.
No, I've been here the whole time. I couldn't say anything. I just now found the mute button. Sorry, but
well, I'm glad you found your voice, Jonathan. It's sort of what we're here to do.
yeah, thanks. I submitted my thing online, but I cannot read it like a story because I'm my visual impairment it'll be like all choppy and stuff. So I was
Okay.
wondering if someone else could read for me, or
Sure, I can read
like,
it for you. if you'd
how
like.
do I send it to you? I mean,
Actually, I believe you already submitted it, correct?
yes.
Then give me a second and I can pull it up. And that's what we're here for. All right.
Was someone
let's
else
see.
going first or for me?
Yeah, we'll see. Kevin, did you just, I called on you first. Did you want to go, Kevin?
I wanted to go, but the device I was going to read it with quit working on me, so if somebody could help me read it, that'd be great.
Sure, we can definitely do that for you. All right, as long as you gentlemen don't mind my voice saying your words, we'll start with Kevin and then we'll go on to John. Let me see if I can pull up Kevin's work.
Sorry, Kevin.
And I have not read them in advance, so forgive me if I stumble. Okay, this is Graduation Day by Kevin Morales. A sunny spring morning blanketed the auditorium, whose echo conveys more special moments than words ever will. Slowly, yet confidently, I made my way from the front row to the podium on the stage. As my voice stroked the revering, solemn silence, my words stirred the hearts and minds of my fellow classmates. Like a tornado that causes chaos with every drop of water and with every blow of its mighty winds, it was a symbol of what awaited outside of the auditorium doors. As we stepped out into the ever-pleasant sunshine, people began embracing me and the rest of my classmates. The hugs were genuine. The words of encouragement were heartfelt, and as we held our diplomas in front of us, I felt as though I had climbed the steepest mountain triumphantly. No interval of time mattered at that moment. And yet, it was a day that brought us countless consequences as the time intervals that continuity allows. Continuity allows, my bad. So, is that okay, Kevin?
Yes, thank you for reading it.
I tried to follow your punctuation, so hopefully that was all right as a first read. So that was Graduation Day by Kevin.
Remind me of my graduation. Yeah. Nice.
So were you the valedictorian? You were the speaker?
I was, and it was a very special day, so I'm glad I got to tell that story. And I'm glad I'm going to listen to a lot more wonderful stories.
Well, I'm really glad that you decided to share that, Kevin. And I loved, now I can see it more than some of the other folks in this being the one who had the opportunity to read that. But you definitely, your punctuation and the flow of your words really helped me as I was reading it, feel that anticipation. Right? The way that you combine your sentences and you do the slow, like the short sentences that sort of built up, your stylistic and use of actual form within it was the enjambment that he used was almost poetic, right? And so, and the words you were using, and the feelings that it stirred, even the stirred the hearts and minds, right? You're stirring in your tornadoes and the wind and the blowing air. I mean, I hope it wasn't, you're talking about the hot air coming out of you.
Kevin, is the storm outside symbolic?
Yes, it was symbolic of what was going to be expected of us right after the days that.
Oh, it's
came after
beautifully
graduation.
said. I mean, that's the power of that piece, and it is very poetic.
And we go with it step by step with you. Immediately as you move toward the podium, we're doing it with you step by step. I can imagine it so clearly. It's a short piece, but so meaningful and wonderful. I loved it.
Thank you.
And it's interesting, like even ties back, like I said, to Helen and Geraldine, these steps that draw us onward, right? Intentionally or unintentionally, right? That take us back into things that we remember, and the turmoil and the exaltation that we feel at these various things.
That's well said, Kelly.
Yeah, there's a movement in writing And just as there's a movement in life, things progress. And writing tries to make sense of that movement in some way, or to suggest that there's something larger than just the flow of experience. There's something that makes the experience meaningful. And I think you did that very well in that piece. You now have to go out into the world,
Yeah.
and it's storming out there, and it's yeah, really.
I mean, it's a tornado. I mean, this is,
Exactly. I was like, you have to make sure you take Christopher's cane and stay out of Australia. We should be all right.
I can see it.
Kevin, Kevin,
And watch the undertow if
Yeah,
you go to
well-
New Zealand.
may I ask how long ago the graduation was? Is that too personal?
It was about 8 years ago. And
Oh,
talk about sight being, the convictions being the only sight you have. That's exactly how I felt that day. Is, well, really, we don't have a lot of sight. We don't have a lot of options sometimes or resources, but we work with what we have, and by the grace of God, we make it through.
Absolutely. That was what I was thinking when I was writing that poem, is I do have mobility skills, but pretty much travel skills, cane and, so forth. But that was pretty much it.
And with Christopher's, I'm sorry, I'm trying to pick up on the cues of when people are finished, so forgive me if I'm appearing rude. I want to kind of go back to Christopher's piece when he was, I forget the line where you were talking about sight being your only conviction. I think that was a good metaphor, because you were saying that the family that you were visiting, you didn't know anything about. So your conviction also was kind of like I lose words, were almost like a metaphor for the fact that you had no insight as to your family or anything. You were kind of going in this situation completely cold.
Exactly.
Like that word insight. There are lots of things in the etymologies of words or their origins, but insight is a wonderful thing. And I think that's really a lot of what we're dealing with here is insight.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
Well, let's see if it continues on. Jonathan, are you ready to have your work read?
Yes.
All right. Jonathan is up next. Dun, 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 right after this short commercial break.
Yeah.
All right. All right, and I'm just looking for Jonathan's work.
John.
Sorry,
It would be under John.
I'm doing my best. I'm like, I just keep seeing the word Jonathan on there.
I know.
Really?
I have no clue why my son's name's up there.
Oh, that's all right. I'm like, I will learn how to be a better rememberer. All right, John's work is Going the Extra Mile, which is, by the way, it is complete irony that what the first line of this story is. All right, 1 moment, I'll start again. Going the extra mile. Did my name just get called? Said John, as he was amidst the heavy conversation with his best friend, Trina. I think it did, she said, with an air of trepidation. Look, John, Gail is summoning you to get up there. You could tell by the way he was walking in his countenance that he did not have a clue what the hoopla was all about. As he approached Gail, she grabbed a shiny plaque and handed it to him and pronounced, "This is to acknowledge his effort and work he individually went above and beyond for each student he was tutored, while pursuing his own degree here at Niagara County Community College." Then she turned to him and asked if he had anything to say. Usually, this would be the time that he would change the channel on the television or whisper to someone sitting next to him, "Oh, here we go," because he did not like the attention drawn to him. To make matters worse, the microphone made a high-pitched sound, like it was telling everyone in the room to pay attention and listen closely. As much as John wanted to take the plaque and run out of there, like a bat out of hell, he knew he couldn't. So,
Sorry.
without having any type of preparation, he stated, "Whew, sorry, everyone. This moment was sprung onto me. I do not have anything to say, but thank you." Then, when he started to leave, he suddenly stopped and turned back to the podium. Do you know what? I do have something to say. He proudly said, I'd like to take this time to thank the Academy. And as he held the plaque close to his chest, like it was an Oscar that he had just won for the Best Lead Actor Award, the audience began to laugh and clap. He gave a nod and quickly returned to his seat. Well, how does it feel to win that award? Trina exclaimed jokingly as she held up the glass of water as if to propose a toast. John sat back in the chair, looked around the room, taking it all in. He said to his best friend, it feels real good, Tree. Showing her the plaque, I never expected something like this to be given to me, he uttered while wiping a tear that started to run down his cheek. I wonder though, could Gail and the rest of the office make this surprise so I couldn't have a long-winded speech prepared, knowing how much I like to talk? He said with a chuckle.
Maybe our newcomer could have some comments to make on that.
Oh yeah, I thought it was I go through instructions and like I tend to delve into something before I read the instructions first. But I seen that they write this scripted story, and I wanted to make sure that you guys pretty much had a what do you call it? You guys had a picture in your minds of my sentences and stuff. I've never written poetry before, and truthfully, up until now, I didn't even know this is a poetry class. So,
oh well, it's poetry and short story, John. So
yeah,
it's don't worry. Just because some people got the wax poetic doesn't mean a short Hemingway sentence is still welcome.
okay. Oh, and thank you for reading, by the way. It was very good. And I just would like to, take it all in, and as far as like to get much knowledge, because usually up until I'm 43 years old, so up until now, I worked with the other side of my brain with working with numbers. I'd like to use the other side now to like arts, and I've delved into like cooking and stuff. I really, trying to get to all the wisdom, I guess. But I like all y'all stories. So
Well,
Great.
we like yours.
Yes.
This is a very,
Absolutely.
very good story. It's a story, and it's true, and it's wonderful. I enjoyed it very much.
I
I
felt
like
as
the
though
character.
I felt as though it was a short story as well. Delightful, award-winning. I thought it had the touch or feeling of a short story as well.
And I like the character. It had a lot of character to it. We really got an opportunity to kind of know who you are, who the person that you were writing about is. So I like that. Real good glimpse into you.
thank you.
In the room here, Michelle would like to make a comment. Go ahead, Michelle.
I think what I took from that is that we all have something to say, even if it's humorous, if it's, light. When he said that in the story that he does have something to say. He didn't think he did.
Yeah.
He didn't think he
does.
was going to get an award. And that's kind of the premise of what we're doing here, that we all have something to say.
Yes,
That's very important.
exactly.
Well said.
I think that's, and sometimes we don't have the opportunity to prep, right? What you're gonna say when someone comes up to you and says, well, what do you have to say? You're like, well, when you ask me that, I don't know.
Mhm.
Right, but it's, but even the act of being asked to say something is important.
You got a sense of his friendships too. He was surrounded by these people who were cheering him on. I mean, it's a short story, but it tells a lot. There's a lot of detail in there.
And it kind of reminded me again of what we're doing here. Maybe the author is a little bit afraid or tentative about presenting to a group, but he is.
Yes.
Here you are.
Yeah.
You know, and
and-
it's also, it's interesting also in all of in the majority of the stories, we talk about peer support,
Mhm.
right? Whether that is someone throwing you a rope literally or
Mhm.
figuratively.
Mhm.
It's something that, or whether you're the one who's throwing the rope.
And I love the sound of the squealing microphone and how it represents the trepidation of accepting the award and making that speech, period. An apostrophe is the last place you want to be, comma, but having support got you through, period.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yes. You know, it points out, or one of the things that's pointed out here again is that, you know, we live generally, most people live in such a visual culture. Some would claim there's visual pollution. But what we've been able to achieve thus far, even this far into the workshops, is this sense of you know, the need and the glory of being able to listen to one another, really, and to and how good literature has a sound, and that sound I think we've heard in you know, in most of everything here that you know, that we've heard today. In fact, all of it in different ways. So you know, that's a very important thing, and I think we're doing something that is unique in that respect.
Listening to Bob is a rare gift you can give
Yeah.
someone else, because I would say many people are really only interested in their own voice, and they're unwilling to listen to others. And if you can give that to another person, the ability to listen and empathize, I guess is the word.
Mhm.
It's a wonderful gift if you can have the patience to do that.
And that's one of the things that visual impairment brings home, that the sense of patience, that it, you know, that patience is called upon in very many different ways. And it's a good thing to learn, visually impaired or not.
And look how rewarded we are today, just by being able to listen.
I'd like to make a comment on that. I realize there are a lot of visual there are a lot of statements made on visual perception, and that both literally and so I guess what I'm trying to say is, although I don't necessarily have a problem with vision, but I do, or did. I had two cataracts. I had two cataract surgeries, and well, one in each eye. And through that, I think I've always known that that would be a terrible thing to not have the vision, especially as an artist. And then a second experience was, even after cataract surgery, I had some blurriness. There was apparently film developing over my eyes, and I had to go back for laser surgery, or laser procedure or treatment. But in all that, I realized how important it is, and not even being able to drive at night without seeing halos, or not being able to see more than 2 cars ahead of you. So I can, even though I'm not visually impaired, the way that I'm hearing in this group, I feel that I've been there and could possibly be there. So I'm taking all that in, and I'm appreciating all that you all are saying. And I haven't at this time been invited to read my piece, but I'd like to do that now before we close. But I'm sort of saying,
Audio now on mute.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I think that was just background noise.
Okay, so the importance of over the years and time and travel that I've paid attention to colors and moods and atmospheres and elements and environments and things like that. So I don't know, I'm just rambling on, but I just wanted you all to know that this conversation is bringing me into an awareness, a new awareness of what being blind or visually impaired means, and I appreciate that. So this piece that I have is called Love is Monochromatic, and without visions, you wouldn't even, some people are just legally blind in one eye and they can see, but I'm understanding that they are not seeing possibly full color or what have you. I don't know. Anyway, with that, I'll just read. I love traveling the friendly purple skies that appears to be blue, where the clouds are puffy, white, and near enough to touch their downy fabric. I love a skip and a hop from frosty Buffalo to the Ohio Valley, bouncing through dreary Chicago to snowy Minneapolis and back again. I love New York, where I can lose myself in the crowd, where sights and sounds are intense, but my name is a mist. I even love taking in the sounds and sights of Atlanta's opaque underground and recalling another time and place where secretive tracks moved my ancestors north to safety. I love kayaking in the Blackwater River of West Virginia. I don't mind falling in, taking a sip of the dark amber. I love sultry summers of yellow green when the water is cool and it doesn't matter if it's drinking rain, a river, or swimming water. It's all bright to me. I love long getaways in Vegas where the food is good and plentiful. People are gorgeous, yet money is short or shorter than that arm on a slot machine. I love parts of North Carolina where tall evergreens greet me from afar, standing at attention like soldiers saluting. And I love the sound of sunburned pine cones when they fall on the ground from branches on high at night, and they play a sonata of plunk, plump. I love silence so dense, I can hear my heartbeat, while large-mouth bass nibble at the surface. And sunny mornings when the air is crisp and sweet. I love warm evenings when the deep blue ocean meets the sun in a vermilion sky, reaching its horizon in Hawaii. I love midday walks on a sandy beach and watching vacationers relaxing under colorful, oversized umbrellas, and children playing in the sun, building sandcastles while parents snooze with downturned novels, resting on knees or stands. I love traveling through Costa Rica and staying in 9 resorts over a course of 9 days. I love mornings when the sloths fall from trees, landing on the roofs, laughing at their own buffoonery. Most of all, I love when out of the blue, you can say, I love you.
Mhm.
And our time together is indigo and not crimson. I love being loved and knowing that our love is monochromatic.
Like it.
I like it. I'm sorry.
I just,
like it.
what's your name? Sorry.
I'm sorry, it's Rosetta.
Rosetta. Right
The
from the beginning, you had me like daydreaming. It was beautiful. I loved it. You just all your descriptive text is like you had me like I said in a daydream. It was good. Very good.
Thank you.
Like a paintbrush. Sometimes when I hear things, I see things, and it made me want to close my eyes and not really concentrate or worry about this sight, the sight in my eyeballs itself. What I could see was a blank canvas, and from the bottom up, a picture being painted. I like it. I like it. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Very touching. And then to equate that with love, because I think that we should all be careful of the picture that we paint called love.
Mm-hmm.
So I could just see that paintbrush painting a picture. And I think that's what a successful writer, I feel like I've succeeded when I write something if I have adequately painted the picture. And I think that you adequately painted the picture.
There's a beautiful rhetorical, excuse me, there's a beautiful rhetorical device in that too. The repetition of I love, that carries the momentum, and it leaves you with a suspense. What do I love next? And it's a beautifully structured thing.
I like too that the artist's rapture with color, which she worries about at the beginning, but she certainly adores color. And I'm reminded of the artists who, like musicians and other people, they lose their capacity to go on with their passion. And yet I was thinking of artists who have been blinded as well. And I was thinking of Monet, when his vision became very blurry, he created something extraordinary. He adapted to his blindness or incipient blindness and created something extraordinarily beautiful with his pond pictures and so forth. And I think we used the term earlier, something you press on. So I find that remarkable too, that artists who cannot see the color they once saw are able to recreate something else equally beautiful.
Because as a blind person, I'm sorry, as a blind person, after a while, eyes don't necessarily become important. I mean, like for me, in the scheme of life, unless I'm kind of forced to, I don't really think about blindness. For some days, I don't necessarily think about blindness. I just proceed on. I feel like I'm on this ride and I'm on this path, and I just get up and follow the path.
That's a beautiful statement. I would join you in that. I don't think of my impairment. I just go, really. And
And I wanted to second that. This is Christopher also, and certainly when I was writing my poem, and certainly in my own life, blindness is just basically it's a condition. But as I was writing this poem and I was actually visualizing myself on that journey, we have techniques, we have blindness skills, we have cane travel, we have ways of identifying street crossings that do not involve vision that we have pioneered. And even though I'm in this poem referring to my week and also referring to Rosetta's in different countries, we're still using the same techniques and we still are able to press on, because of that. I kind of lost my train of thought, but
No, Froggy, go ahead.
Yeah, isn't it the author's job in a way to take the person from the life that they're living and the circumstances that they're facing and transport them to another realm, be it through imagery and color and sight and sound? That's what I've always thought when I've written, is that you need to transport somebody along with you and take them on that short ride. Even if it's only, a few minutes. Some of my favorite books have ended in ways that I've sat there and the last chapter, I'd only read 1 page a day because I didn't want the book to end. Because the imagery was so good and I wanted to stay in that transported mindset for as long as I could. And I think that is a lot of the author's job, to take you to these other realms.
Very well said.
Any author would love to hear that you're delaying the end of the book because it's so precious to you.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful statement.
Right? The only thing, and then when you finally do, that book becomes the one that has the most worn covers, the dog-eared pages, right? Like the spine that is, falls open to your favorite passage, that it becomes a friend,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, okay, we actually, believe it or not, we are at 12:59, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh my
We
goodness.
Holy cow,
I
yeah.
know, it went by very, very quickly.
Did anybody not read,
Did
Kelly?
anybody not read who wanted to?
I don't have anything to share this time, but if anybody would like to share their stories with me by email, they can. And as soon as I figure out how, I'll send my email to the messenger on the Zoom here.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you. Yeah.
Plus, I use JAWS, so it can be annoying at times, which I must apologize for. And
It's
I
1
also
o'clock.
had vision loss my whole life since birth. For those who didn't know.
All right, we can definitely keep an eye on that. So there is, so we'll meet again, same time, same place, next week, if hopefully everyone will be able to join us. And we'll put up some more prompts in the Google Classroom. If anybody has any questions with that, or be able to log in. You can always bring your work here, bring it raw, so we haven't heard it before. You're welcome to submit it online or send it to our teachers, and we can make sure that they have that in advance. Did anybody else have any questions or comments before we close out for the day? Bob, Norah?
This was very enjoyable.
Yeah.
I agree.
It was great. You guys are amazing writers.
Very good.
Yes.
You're an amazing reader.
Oh, wow. I'm gonna keep writing next to the work. It's your punctuation. Let me know when I'm supposed to pause.
I like all the different mindsets and how people are interpreting their works or presenting their works. So it's like reading multiple books or pieces all at once. So
We'll maybe this the prompts for the upcoming one. Maybe we'll do something, a prompt on the importance of patience
Yeah,
And maybe Froggy, we'll put your prompt up to see if we can transport someone to your favorite place.
Right.
So those will be the, we'll put those up as the prompts, and if anyone has any other ideas of things they want folks to write about, we'll put those up there. But if you have an idea of your own, of course, you're welcome to do that as well.
and one of the things this whole session says is that there's a lot more to be said. And I think each of you, I will look forward to what more you have to say.
As will I.
Excellent. And this time, I'm actually gonna see if we can post, we'll take a look and see if we can get this one, the recording of this one posted up online.
That
Oh,
would be
good.
fun.
That'd be great.
All right,
Yeah.
so, thank you. I don't wanna leave everyone.
I don't want this
I
to
know,
end either.
We're officially,
Neither, no.
it is the one thing I hate about Zoom, right? Is it like, when the class officially ends, you actually have to hit the end button. You can't just all sit around and drink coffee and become a different, and relax and keep the conversation going, right? So, you know what, I will stop the recording button, so we'll hit the record, we'll see that. And